This video is brought to you by my generous backers over on Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel and get cool perks like access to the Discord, seeing the videos a week before anyone else, or exclusive Patreon only gameplays, then feel free to check out my Patreon. The link's in the description below. Yarok the Desecrated versus Sen Triplets. That would be, yeah, if only that Cabal Coffers was a forest, that would be much better, but it isn't, so we're not going to be able to keep that. Yeah, we can make that work. We'll just get rid of Villainous Wealth there, because that's an endgame card for us. Just a swamp from our opponent. We will just play out a tap land as well. And we'll see if we draw into a green land or if we need to go for one of those with the Flooded Strand. Looks like our opponent is continuing with their slow start, and Exploration is really good. So we're definitely going for a green source with Flooded Strand. Then do we go for the Exploration or the Lotus Cobra? Let's go for Exploration now. And then we can play this Vesuva as a copy of the Tropical Island. And that gives us another green source ready for next turn. Alright, an Arcbound Ravager from our opponent. That can do a lot of damage really quickly, even in the form of combos and stuff like that. So we'll have to be very wary of the Arcbound Ravager. We'll go straight in for the Lotus Cobra. We've drawn into a fetch. We can screw up our opponent's mana as well if we want to. And then from that 2 mana from the landfall on Lotus Cobra, we'll go for Growth Spiral and continue to ramp, throw out the Snow-Covered Forest, and we should be able to get our commander down here. So now, with a completely empty hand, we will pass it over to our opponent, who has 6 cards in hand, now 5. And it's a Wrath of God that gets rid of Yarok and our Lotus Cobra. Do we want to wasteland them in response to that? If we get into a land, we can just play out Yarok again, so we'll leave the wasteland for now. Alright, well, we can play a land. It won't tap for mana though, so let's just go in for that 3 visits, and that guarantees us our Yarok next turn. At least with the empty hand we've got, the Sen Triplets isn't going to be much of a threat to us. Let's see if they go in for their commander anyway. They certainly do. Obviously they've got no cards to choose from. So this turn we've just drawn into yet another land, so we'll go in for our commander. And then I'm actually going to go in for the command tower. A wasteland onto the command tower, just so that they've got less mana to play around with. Obviously they've got more cards than us, so if they're struggling on mana, that should slow them down. But not playing a land, so that wasteland was actually really good there. They may have a land in hand and they just haven't cast it yet. A Treasure Mage grabs something with CMC 6 or greater, an artifact with CMC 6 or greater. And they have grabbed a Salvaging Station. And they played the Expedition map there. We get into, guess what, another land. Not doing too well here. At least we've got a Death Toucher, and like I said, our opponent can't do anything with the Sen Triplets. Alright, they're going for Capsize. They do have Metalcraft from the Mox Opal, thanks to their commander. And they went for Capsize onto our Tropical Island, and then obviously they can play the land straight away, so if they're just going to go for Capsize on our lands every turn, that's going to get quite annoying. But it's not like we're drawing into anything. Alright, I was at the end of the turn going to go in for removing some counters from the Dark Depths, but it wouldn't let me do it for some reason. And yet another land for us. We're just not getting into much luck this game. Let's immediately get rid of that. And that can draw us into a card. Miri's Guile. I mean, they can bounce that and play it immediately, but we'll force them to do it at least. Now deciding to crack that expedition map. And they go for Ancient Tomb, which they can tap for black mana thanks to our Urborg, so they're not likely to lose any more life to that than they actually want to. And it is, yes, exactly what we thought they were going to do. Capsize onto Miri's Guile, and they've got that Mox Opal to play it. Alright, not playing it. That's funny. Oh, they don't have Metalcraft anymore, that's why. Because they got rid of the expedition map. So just taking us off of looking at the top cards. It's continuing to not let us remove counters from the Dark Depths, by the way. I don't know if it's bugged or something, or maybe this game is bugged. But we'll get down the Miri's Guile and the Nature's Law anyway. And at least by the time we actually draw into something, we should be able to cast it. Alright, just tried it again, and now it's actually going to let me remove counters, so we could be down to about 5 counters on the Dark Depths here, but I've been trying to do it at my opponent's end step and it wouldn't let me, so there's something going on there. And it's that Capsize again, with buyback, so they bounce the Miri's Guile, and this time they will take it away from us. That's a really bad one for them to take away. We could have fixed our draws nicely with that. And we've even got a shuffle effect on board to get rid of the top 3 cards if we don't like them. And I was going to say, I hate to sound like a broken record, another land. A broken record in reference to the Dark Depths, but again, at the end of my opponent's turn, it wouldn't let me do it. So we'll just pile a bunch of mana into it now. There's no point in us showing our opponent that we don't have any anything in hand to actually play. The last bit of mana into Dark Depths. Decided to crack the Prismatic Vista eventually because it's just one less land to draw into. Doubt it makes too much of a difference, but we're not doing anything else at this point. It's noteworthy actually that they can bounce the Dark Depths with the Capsize, so I doubt we're going to be taking all the counters off of that anyway. Yeah, there's the Capsize again, this time onto Underground Sea, so that's a land that they're obviously going to make use out of with the black and blue mana that produces. We've now gotten down a Sword of Light and Shadow as well. So maybe they want the Arcbound Ravager back. Obviously we can't block here because it's pro-black. They get their Arcbound Ravager back and gain 3 life. Alright, a Fierce Empath, finally, something that isn't a land. And that's actually a little bit of card advantage for us, so let's see what we want to grab here. We can actually grab 2 things. Maybe we're going to be able to refill our hand a little bit. Although, do we want to feed our opponent cards to play? Just for the sake of getting into a bunch of blockers, we'll go Avenger of Zendikar. Because it's pro-black and white with the sword, which obviously doesn't affect the Avenger or the plants. And then we're not going to be able to cast Regal Force this turn, so we'll leave it in the library, ready to grab later on. We'll go Prime Time here, and then we'll actually cast the Primeval Titan. Don't know if it's a good idea to potentially feed my opponent a Prime Time, but we have to do something. So let's get ourselves into a bunch of lands here. Being saved by Primeval Titan once again, potentially. We'll go Field of the Dead just to pepper the board with zombies. And then we'll go for the Thespian Stage. They can bounce the Marit Lage, even if we do get into that. They can also bounce the Dark Depths, like I said. But that's 6 mana that they have to put into Capsize. And that's a considerable amount of mana, even with all the mana they have in play. So we'll try and encourage them into that. And then we get even more mana with the, or even more lands with the Primeval Titan. Seeing as how we have Urborg, we'll go Cabal Coffers. And we'll grab a Nurturing Peat land as well, because that's more card draw for us on a land. Those lands entering obviously triggers the Field of the Dead. And Field of the Dead is triggered twice from Yarok, so we end up with a heap of zombies. We'll swing in and gain a little bit of life here. Doubt we're going to be getting commander damage on our opponent, but like I said, we'll gain a little bit of life at least. We can't block with it anyway. In fact, we may have just... If our opponent can get rid of the green stuff, we may have just fed the Treasure Mage back to them for another tutor. Because the Sword of Light and Shadow can grab that back. We'll just see what they go for here anyway. They can look at the top three with Mirri's Guile. Now, do they want to cast our Avenger of Zendikar? If they go for Avenger of Zendikar, they're not going to be able to capsize with buyback, so it really depends on what they want to prioritise. Well, they are capsizing, but it's onto our Thespian stage, so yeah, they're taking that away from us. We've got a bunch of mana to remove the counters from the Dark Depths. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to get us to sink mana into that. They've still got Capsize open, which is... yeah, so they might be awaiting the Marit Lage. Bloodghast isn't the best, but we might get into something to do with Bloodghast. Let's go in for Bloodghast first of all. Just for the sake of having stuff in play. And then we'll go for Avenger of Zendikar as well. We're going to get a heap of tokens. Obviously the Avenger of Zendikar triggers twice here. Luckily for us, our opponent decided to keep up Capsize. But if we can give them enough threats, then Capsize won't do a whole lot for them. Get rid of that Nurturing Peatland. Oh, and we get into the Lightning Greaves. What do we want to put Lightning Greaves onto? Let's try and protect the Primeval Titan. We can still recast that. They went to tap down mana then, so it's a case of... do they want to go for Capsize now and just allow us to recast the Primeval Titan? I mean, they're between a rock and a hard place. We recast it, we get an ETB, and then we can still swing in anyway, so they might as well let us have the prime time here. And then maybe bounce the Avenger so that we don't get a bunch of counters on the plants. Let's just swing in and see what they do. Pull back the Yarok, because that will die to our opponent's commander. We'll pull back the Fierce Empath as well, because we might want to block with it. The more green creatures we have in play, the better. Primetime triggers again, and in response, our opponent is doing something. Going for the Thespian stage. Ah, that's clever. Yeah, going for Thespian stage onto our Dark Depths. Yeah, very good. So they get a Marit Lage of their own. We will say yes to the Primeval Titan. Get a couple of lands in. Not really sure what I want here. We'll just go for Tectonic Edge and the Gaia's Cradle. Gaia's Cradle and Field of the Dead, as you all know, is a really good combination of cards. Field of the Dead triggers twice from each land entering, and then we're always yes and yielding to Avenger of Zendikar, so this will get a bunch of counters as well. 2 counters per land entering, thanks to our Yarok. So it's up to our opponent to have a board wipe or mass bounce at this point. Don't really care about their Marit Lage as long as we can outrace it. I think our Primeval Titan has done his work as well, so down goes the prime time. Yeah, so we knock them down to 9. They could really do with winning next turn. They don't have the Capsize up anymore unless they want to cast it without buyback. They decide not to, so Lightning Greaves lands on the Avenger. Then we'll remove some counters from the Dark Depths, because seemingly we can't do that during our opponent's turn. Probably could have had a Marit Lage by now if we'd been allowed to do that. Now, looking at more cards with the Mirri's Guile, can our opponent get into the answer they need? Oh wow, that's a real surprise. Okay, so turns out of all the cards that are in their hand, and of the 3 cards that are on top with Miri's Guile, they don't have an answer for our current board state. Really didn't think we were going to win that one. We just vomited our hand onto the board in the early game. Continued to play lands every turn for like 5 turns in a row. Got into a bunch of mana and then top decked. Eventually the Fierce Empath is what turned that around for us. So managed to battle through constant pepperings with the Capsize. And yeah, eventually got into the answers that we needed. So very surprising victory that. I'm quite surprised at that. But anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed that turn of events. Be sure to leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you want to help support the channel and push it through to more viewers that haven't discovered us yet. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.